Alright guys, the break is over, it's the beginning of a new month, and I figured now is the perfect time to get back to making some video reviews. Now, May of this year I made a month of Metroid series where I reviewed just about every single 2D Metroid game in existence. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to go through another series of Metroid games, and, well, I figured before I get to my review of Metroid Other M, which I just got, I need to beat, we need to tackle the Metroid Prime series. So without further ado, here's my review of Metroid Prime for the GameCube. And no, your eyes aren't tricking you, I no longer have a beard. In addition to my excitement for Metroid Fusion, my mind was also excited for another Metroid title being produced for the GameCube called Metroid Prime, despite the fact that in 2002 I didn't even own a GameCube. I figured it would be a 3D title. I mean, Metroid was due to make the jump after Mario and Zelda successfully made theirs, but to switch the perspective to a first-person view caught me completely off guard. When it was first announced, the game received quite a large amount of negativity just because of the FPS approach, and it looked like the game was going to bomb because of it. However, as soon as the game was released, just about all of that negativity disappeared, and in its place took over incredible satisfaction. Metroid Prime was released on November 17, 2002 to near universal acclaim, which of course only made me more excited for the game, and it just tore me up inside that I didn't have a GameCube then and there. And it also didn't help that its commercial was just incredibly badass. I seriously thought a movie was in the works after seeing this, but I guess I decided not to jump on the idea. Maybe that's a good thing though. So 1 year after its release, I finally got a GameCube, and one of the first games I bought for it besides Super Smash Bros. Melee was Metroid Prime. Needless to say, I spent an entire weekend playing this game non-stop. But now that I bored you long enough with backstory, let's just jump into this. Now keep in mind, the Prime series are games that are much more in-depth and of a larger scale compared to the 2D games, so it takes me longer to play, record, and write reviews for them, which is why I'm not exactly making this another month of Metroid. I'll try to write these reviews as fast as I can, but don't expect a review a week with these games. Elliot won't be showing up so much this time either, as he's never beaten a Metroid Prime game, so he really doesn't have much to say about it. In terms of the timeline, the Metroid Prime series takes place after the events of the first game, but before the events of the second game, Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. While traveling in the reaches of space, Samus receives a distress signal from a space station that belongs to space pirates. Samus emerges from her ship, and for the first time ever we see Samus in all of her glory in stunning 3D. I was amazed, and still am, by how good Samus looks during this scene, but I always thought this particular model of the power suit looked a bit too bulky, not to mention her arm cannon being nearly as large as her leg. But anyway, after traveling inside, she comes across the Parasite Queen, which after defeating causes the self-destruction sequence to activate. While escaping, Samus comes across a resurrected Ridley, now known as Meta Ridley, because adding the word meta to something makes it cool? Ridley manages to escape, and while scanning an elevator, Samus is caught off guard with an explosion, causing her to lose everything but the suit itself. Which really doesn't make much sense compared to what Samus has been through before and which will go through in the future, but hey, that's the power of a cutscene. Consistency be damned. Samus escapes the exploding station and follows Meta Ridley to the nearby planet called Talon 4. I don't know why it's called Talon 4, I'm guessing Samus visited the other 3 Talons which caused them to explode, because you know Metroid, whatever planet Samus visits, it explodes at some point or another. It's only a matter of time before this planet suffers the same fate. So anyway, after Samus lands on Talon, she soon discovers that the space pirates have run amok on this planet, experimenting with this mysterious substance known as Phazon, which is incredibly radioactive and has the ability to mutate whatever it touches. As soon as Samus lands on the planet, the story takes a backseat and is told through many scriptures, lores, and computer logs that Samus can discover by using her new scan visor, which allows Samus to gather information about her surroundings and is key to figuring out how to progress with the game. Scanning is essential. You're going to be doing a lot of it, not only to activate devices and open up pathways, but it's also necessary if you want to complete the game 100%. You know, if you're into that kind of thing. Cutscenes are really only used to introduce a new area of the game or introducing a boss, so if you're afraid of an overabundance of cutscenes, then worry not, because that's not the case here. Talon 4 is a massive planet containing many areas that Samus will need to venture through in order to discover new abilities and ultimately put an end to whatever the space pirates have in store for her. Throughout your journey, you'll explore the open areas of the Talon overworld, the ancient sites of the Chozo ruins, the fiery depths of the Magmore caverns, the popsicle that is the Phendrana drifts, and finally the Phazon mines, the heart of the space pirates HQ on this particular planet. Your ultimate goal is to gain access to the Impact Crater, which requires you to collect 12 Chozo artifacts scattered throughout the planet. Like Metroid and Super Metroid, the game is incredibly non-linear. You're not told exactly where to go, and areas aren't immediately accessible until you discover the proper power-ups in order to reach them. If you end up getting a bit lost, your visor will eventually tell you the general direction you should be going, but it doesn't exactly tell you how to get to the specific area. That's up to you. If you want a hardcore Metroid experience though, you can turn off the hints your visor gives you and try to find out everything yourself. The game is in the first-person perspective, but instead of having a heavy emphasis on shooting things, it's the exploration factor that's really the driving force of this game. The process of discovering new areas, collecting power-ups to increase your arsenal, and the overall atmosphere that 2D Metroids have is captured perfectly in this game. The feeling of being alone on a huge planet is delivered tremendously here, and first-timers will have no idea what's around the corner with each new area they explore. You move Samus with the analog stick. Shooting your weapon is done by pressing the A button, and the B button lets you jump. The Y button allows you to shoot missiles when you get them, and the X button allows Samus to morph into her iconic Morph Ball mode, which I'm still not clear on exactly how it works. I mean, when you obtain it, this happens. But what does it mean? Is Samus the glowing stuff in the center? Huh. The L trigger allows you to lock onto targets to easily shoot them, and it also allows you to strafe left and right. If you press the B button while locked onto something while moving left and right, you can perform a dash jump which allows you to avoid projectiles and get items earlier than usual if you know how to abuse it. The R trigger allows Samus to tilt her view and gun up in any direction, allowing you to get a better view of the area. I like to use it to shoot innocent birds. Your visor, besides allowing you to see, also acts as your heads-up display. On the lower left is your selection of visors, which you can switch between by pressing the corresponding button on the D-pad. The lower right showcases your beam weapons, which don't stack up like they did in Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, instead act as separate weapons. You can select different beam weapons with the C-stick. It's pretty quick and streamlined. On the upper left is your radar, allowing you to see threats, and on the upper right is your map, now in complete 3D. You can check the map completely by pressing the Z button in case you get lost. I think it's pretty obvious at this point, but on the top center is your energy, in addition to the amount of energy tanks you collected, and the center left is a warning meter which rises when you approach an environmental hazard like lava or phazon. And finally, the center right bar is your missile count. It's pretty self-explanatory stuff, but I don't think it hurts to explain it anyway. Now, because of that power-stealing explosion from the beginning of the game, you need to get all your stuff back, but by this time you should be used to this. Missiles make their debut in 3D, and I'm guessing because of the 3D nature of the game, they now have a bit of homing properties, so you don't need to be perfectly precise with them. The Morph Ball and Morph Ball bombs also return, and they pretty much work exactly like they did in the 2D games. Back from Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion are the power bombs, which not only pack a punch, but are also required to destroy certain types of objects to reach new areas and discover hidden goodies. Returning from Metroid 2 is the Spider Ball, which allows Samus to stick to magnetic rails and reach areas she couldn't before. Unlike the Spider Ball from Metroid 2 though, it doesn't allow you to stick onto anything but these magnetic rails, but then again, if you could, then it would be incredibly game-breaking. But hey, at least it makes your Morph Ball look like a yo-yo. The Space Jump also makes a return, but it's no longer a power-up that allows you to jump an infinite amount of times, but rather acts as a simple double jump. Again, if it behaved like it did in the 2D Metroid titles, it would be incredibly broken, and quite frankly, I actually like that it's not just a double jump. It perfectly fits the style of gameplay and allows for a smoother experience. The Grapple Beam from Super Metroid also returns, pretty much acting like it did previously, though it's definitely one of the items you'll use the least. Just like in Super Metroid. Your default weapon is the Power Beam, which has an incredibly fast firing rate. Also returning is the Wave Beam, which doesn't go through walls anymore, but it's used for solving particular types of puzzles and defeating certain enemies. The Ice Beam returns as well, now something like a shotgun in terms of its rate of fire and power. It can also freeze enemies and sometimes shatters them outright. The last beam power-up you'll get is the Plasma Beam, which is now heat-based and it definitely shows. I mean, a fully charged blast can completely disintegrate an enemy, which honestly is a bit unsettling. But speaking of charging, the Charge Beam also returns, working exactly like it did in the previous installments, but now it can also be used to draw on ammunition and health pickups in case it's too far to pick up yourself. In terms of suits, after defeating Flagra, you're rewarded with the Varia suit, which at first I thought was the Screw Attack because the item pickup looks just like it. In fact, the Screw Attack isn't even in this game, so that stupid echo can't pop up and Screw Attack! The Gravity suit also returns, which in addition to giving you better defenses also allows you to travel in water normally, as well as giving you a much clearer view when underwater. In terms of new items, there's quite a bit actually. New to the series is the Boost Ball, which allows you to move pretty damn fast in Morph Ball mode and is required in order to travel up half pipes to reach higher areas. It can also hurt enemies if used right, but I stick to the arm cannon for that kind of stuff. In addition to having your standard visor and scan visor, you can also collect a thermal visor which can be used to travel in dark areas and also allows you to track heat signatures of many things. I actually really like this visor. When I first equipped it, I felt like a predator, minus Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers. You can also collect the X-ray visor, which is pretty much exactly how it sounds. It can be pretty useful, but I certainly don't like it as much as the thermal visor, and it can be pretty disorienting at times too. In addition to the Varia suit and Gravity suit, you can also obtain the new Phazon suit, which looks awesome, but how you receive it though always bugged me. After defeating the Omega Pirate and before it dies, it lands on Samus and splooges its Phazon all over her, corrupting her power suit, but in a way that boosts her defense and protects her from blue Phazon. It's a bit gross when you go into detail about it, but come on Samus, you seriously couldn't have sidestepped out of the way when his big ass fell on you? You're lucky the damn thing didn't self-destruct upon death. Finally, while there aren't any new beam weapons to collect, there are expansions you can collect to add a little more power to your existing beam weapons, at the cost of some missiles per use. For the power beam you have the super missiles, which is great for quick kills, but honestly I kinda missed when it was a separate weapon. For the wave beam you have the wave buster, which costs a lot of missiles to use, but it makes me feel like a ghostbuster, and I like ghostbusters. The ice beam gets the ice spreader, which honestly I never use. It looks pretty though. Finally, the plasma beam gets a flamethrower, which really isn't that spectacular considering we're talking about a flamethrower that's fueled by missiles. Oh well. Talon 4 is crawling with all sorts of creatures, most being incredibly easy to kill, but there are times where you have to face other things like turrets whose bullets pack quite a punch, security drones, space pirates of many flavors, and of course, Metroids. Metroids actually aren't much of a big deal in this game, as any weapon now is capable of killing them, so you no longer have to freeze them and shoot them with 5 missiles in order to defeat them, though that method is still the most effective. Later though, you'll come across different breeds of Metroids, which are more difficult to kill, especially fission Metroids, who I usually just use a power bomb on. One of the most annoying enemies in this game, however, are Chozo ghosts, which start appearing all over the Chozo ruins after reaching a certain area. Not only do they constantly respawn, but they can be pretty annoying to kill, mostly because you face about 3 at a time, and until you get the X-ray visor, they can be frustrating to track down. Not only that, but when they materialize, the room grows incredibly dark, so even when you just want to ignore them, trying to find the exit can be a real bitch. The bosses in this game can range from pathetically easy to somewhat frustrating, especially for first timers. When I first played the game, Flagware gave me somewhat of a hard time and I was constantly getting owned by Meta Ridley. But now I can beat the two with little to no effort on my part. It actually makes me wonder how I had such a hard time in the first place. In order to progress into the last area of the game, you need to collect the 12 Chozo artifacts scattered throughout the entire planet. And this is easily the worst part of the game. I'm serious, if you don't have a guide on you or access to the internet, then good luck trying to figure out how to collect all of these things. Now, some of them are pretty easy to locate, but there's always those select few who I swear is sole purpose just to make your search a living hell. You can collect hints from the temple shrine to get a better understanding of where they are, but their exact locations can be cryptic as all hell. Take this one, the Artifact of Elder. In order to get it, you need to travel into the Space Pirate territory, something that's not exactly on your list of areas to revisit, travel to this area, blast these boxes so you can melt this icy window with your plasma beam, and finally aim a missile at this particular part of this tower that you wouldn't know you can shoot at because you can't lock onto anything on it. And then there's this artifact, which requires you to use the X-ray visor on this completely unassuming wall to see if there's a hidden door which you need to use a power bomb in order to reach it. Usually finding out what you can destroy with a power bomb is as easy as scanning it and see if it's made of bendesium. But no, there's nothing special about this wall at all, so why would you use a power bomb to begin with? The hint only says it's hidden somewhere in this particular room, but in a Metroid game, hidden could mean anything from an invisible wall to a hidden tunnel you could use the morph ball to travel in. Again, this is really only a problem if you don't have a guide of some sort, but jeez. So after collecting all the 12 artifacts, we can finally reach the impact crater. Within the depths of this place is the source of all Phazon on this planet, Metroid Prime. Wow, is it even accurate to call this thing a Metroid now? I get more of a giant enemy crab feeling from this thing.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
It's really not a difficult fight, it just has a crap load of health. But as you might have expected, it has a second form, which is its core essence. Okay, that looks more like a Metroid, only, you know, with a face. In order to beat it, you need to wait until it craps out pure Phazon, stand in the stuff, which, thanks to your Phazon suit, puts you in hyper mode, and shoot the crap out of the creature while you're charged up. Eventually, it'll die and it becomes this, which I immediately thought was a core X from Metroid Fusion, but it turns out the look of this was just a pure coincidence. It latches onto Samus, steals the Phazon suit, and blows up. Probably shouldn't have taken the suit. The impact crater goes under and Samus escapes on her ship, looking at the wreckage before she leaves. If you scanned enough objects in your adventure, you can see Samus without her helmet, but you never see her take off the suit completely. However, if you manage to collect all the items in the game, you get an extra cutscene after the end credits showing a creepy hand emerging from the remains of Metroid Prime. Needless to say, Metroid Prime is a freaking fantastic game. What Super Mario 64 did for the Mario series and what Ocarina of Time did for the Zelda series is exactly what I think Metroid Prime did for the Metroid series. It manages to capture everything that made the 2D title so great, particularly Super Metroid, and translate it incredibly well into 3D. The gameplay is incredibly smooth, and the first-person view really puts you into the depths of Talon 4. The different amount of power-ups and weapons are a real treat to use, and exploration is greatly rewarded if you search hard enough. Graphically speaking, it's one of the best-looking GameCube games ever made, and it still looks good today. The soundtrack is also great, complete with musical pieces that completely immerse you into the game's atmosphere. It's my favorite soundtrack of the Prime series. If you have the Game Boy Advance adapter and a copy of Metroid Fusion, you can unlock the Fusion suit for Samus to wear, which is completely cosmetic, but an awesome bonus regardless. The Chozo artifact collecting is definitely the game's weakest point because it requires a shit ton of backtracking. It definitely breaks up the overall pace of the game, and it's something I never look forward to whenever I replay this game. It's not too big of a deal though because, again, I find myself replaying this game all the time. The game's lighting can also be a bit troublesome at times. Even with the thermal visor and the x-ray visor, there are times where I lose track of myself because I can't exactly see where I'm going, something I'm sure that drives claustrophobics absolutely batshit. I don't know, maybe my TV's brightness is a little too low, but the lighting definitely could have used a bit of tweaking. I will say this now. This installment is my favorite of the Metroid Prime series. It's the absolute perfect blend of exploration, action, and story, and it's simply a joy to replay again and again. Now that's not to say the next two installments are horrible, no, far from it. But this one is the one that certainly appeals to me the most as a Metroid title. I'll go more in depth to what I mean when I review those games, but as for now, awesome gameplay, great replayability, and overall an incredibly fun game. I'll give it a 10 out of 10. Wow, I've been giving a lot of these out lately, have I? What can I say? This game is awesome, and you should definitely try it. There's no better way of starting a series of reviews than by giving the first game a perfect 10 out of 10. But how exactly well do the other Prime games compare to the first one? Well, next time we meet, we'll find out by reviewing Metroid Prime 2 Echoes for the GameCube. Until then, I'm Johnny of the Super Gaming Brothers. You guys have a good night, thank you for watching, and take care.